Why are there so many gods? That question has haunted humanity longer than almost any other, from mountaintops to temples, from the quiet corners of bedrooms to the grand cathedrals of civilization. Human beings have whispered to the sky, each in their own tongue, naming their own invisible protector. And yet, these gods never agree. They never look the same, act the same, or demand the same things. Every tribe, every era, every culture seems to create its own divine hierarchy, its own rules for pleasing something unseen. The world today still carries thousands of gods in memory. Some are still worshipped. Others are forgotten. Fated deities once considered immortal, now silent relics in old books and broken statues. Zeus once ruled the sky. Odin guarded Valhalla. Ra sailed across the heavens in his golden boat. Quetzalcoatl, Vishnu, Yahweh, Allah, each the one true God of their time and place. And yet, all these truths contradict one another completely. Every civilization insists its God is the creator of everything, even though other civilizations were saying the exact same thing long before it existed. The sheer number of gods humanity has imagined tells us something profound, not about divinity, but about ourselves. Because when the same species invents thousands of gods, each declaring absolute truth, it's not the heavens that are speaking. It's the human mind, echoing its own fears, desires, and limitations. Think about it. If one real God existed, an all-powerful being who created everything, why would every culture describe that being differently? Why would one God crave blood sacrifices, another demand silence, another insist on circumcision, and another ask for nothing but meditation? If truth were universal, human religions would converge, but they don't. They splinter endlessly. Because gods are not born from the sky, they are born from context. Human societies evolve in specific environments. A desert tribe creates a god of storms and survival. A civilization dependent on the Nile invents deities of fertility and flood. Mountain people imagine thunder gods, while seafaring cultures revere the waves. Each god reflects its ecosystem, its economy, its weather, its fears. Religion is geography wearing the mask of eternity. It's no accident that the Greek gods looked human, with all the same flaws: lust, jealousy, pride. They were mirrors of human imperfection, magnified to cosmic scale. The Norse gods were warriors because the Norse world was built on war. The Hindu pantheon blossomed with endless forms because India's cultures embraced diversity and symbolism. Even the so-called monotheistic traditions carry regional fingerprints. The God of ancient Israel spoke like a desert warlord, vengeful, territorial, jealous of rivals. That God made sense to a people surrounded by enemies. But take that same deity to another continent, another climate, another era, and suddenly the message shifts. The tone changes. The rituals morph. The God that was once feared becomes the God that loves. The holy texts get rewritten, translated, diluted, and debated into confusion. Religion adapts like language. You can trace its evolution the same way you trace words. Latin becomes Spanish, French, Italian, each distinct yet sharing ancient roots. In the same way, ancient Sumerian myths became Babylonian, then Hebrew, then Christian. Each culture inherited and edited the last, reshaping divine stories like clay. That's why so many flood myths exist, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah. They're not separate miracles, they're cultural copies. Humans didn't hear a god's voice, they heard one another's stories. What's fascinating is that even atheistic or secular societies still create gods in other forms. Political ideologies, celebrities, money. Modern gods dress differently, but serving the same psychological role. Humans crave meaning, order, and something to surrender to. It's uncomfortable to live in a universe without an overseer. So, the mind builds one. And then we worship our own creation. Early humans faced a terrifying world. Disease, storms, predators, the constant mystery of death. Without science, everything seemed personal. If lightning struck a tree, it felt like someone aimed it. If crops failed, it felt like punishment. The mind that didn't understand why invented who. That's how gods were born, as explanations before explanation existed. Each mystery required an author, each fear required a protector. The gods were humanity's first theory of everything. The pattern is universal. Every time knowledge expands, a god shrinks. Lightning used to be divine anger. Now it's electricity. Disease was once demonic possession. Now it's microbiology. Earthquakes were once punishment. Now they're plate tectonics. And yet, new mysteries always remain. So, new gods appear. Wherever ignorance hides, faith finds a home. But that doesn't mean believers are foolish. It means the human brain evolved to find patterns, even when none exist. We're meaning-making machines. When a shadow moves in the dark, it's safer to assume a predator than to ignore it. That instinct, detecting agency even where there is none, kept our ancestors alive. It also made us see faces in clouds, spirits in trees, gods in thunder. The brain that once saved us from tigers also made us pray to the sky. What's even more revealing is how similar divine stories are, even when they emerge oceans apart. Virgin births, dying saviors, sky kings, resurrection myths. These appear everywhere, long before any single holy text was written. Krishna, Horus, Mithras, Jesus, all versions of the same archetype. A heroic figure who dies and returns, symbolizing the cycle of nature, the promise of renewal, and the victory of life over death. It wasn't revelation, it was repetition. Human psychology writing its favorite, a story again and again. Civilizations didn't just imagine gods, they needed them. Religion unified people before nations existed. It made tribes cooperate, obey leaders, and fight wars with conviction. A shared god meant a shared identity. That's why every empire carried its deity like a flag. To challenge the empire's god was to challenge the empire itself. The Roman Empire didn't just conquer land, it conquered belief. They absorbed the gods of others, renaming and rearranging them to fit their system. When Christianity rose, it didn't erase the old gods, it recycled them. Christmas took the date of pagan solstice festivals. Easter borrowed fertility symbols from ancient spring rituals. Even saints replaced minor deities, giving people familiar figures to pray to. Religion is humanity's longest-running rebranding campaign. But what happens when every culture believes its God is the only true one? Conflict. Endless bloody conflict. History is soaked in divine rivalry. Wars fought over which invisible being owns the truth. And yet, every side prayed to win. Every side believed its God was with them. Every side thought their victory would prove divine favor. The battlefield became the testing ground for theology. And still, no God ever showed up. That silence tells its own story. If gods were real, wars between believers of different faiths would have ended long ago. A single undeniable miracle would have settled it. But the miracles always vanish under scrutiny. The louder the claim, the quieter the evidence. Humans invented gods to make sense of chaos. But then they used those gods to justify power. Priests became gatekeepers between the people and the divine. They interpreted the invisible, charged offerings for forgiveness, and turned mystery into a business. Religion became not just comfort, but control. The invention of gods wasn't a mistake. It was an inevitable step in human evolution. It organized morality before laws existed, offered hope before science could cure disease, and explained death before philosophy could face it honestly. But as knowledge grows, the need for divine explanations shrinks. The gods multiply when we are ignorant. They fade when we understand. Still, the question remains, why so many gods if none are real? Because no single god has ever satisfied all human needs. Every culture builds the deity it requires at that moment. Some need forgiveness, some need fear, some need justice, some need a parent. And each generation reshapes the divine face to match its own reflection. The gods change, but humanity stays the same. When you stop and think about it, the persistence of so many gods across time and space is one of the most fascinating paradoxes of human history. On one hand, they serve as reflections of our deepest fears and desires, our search for answers to life's hardest questions. On the other, they've often been used as tools to manipulate, control, and dominate. What's remarkable is that this dual purpose, comfort and control, is built right into the structure of religion itself. It's no accident that gods are portrayed as both loving and wrathful. They give us something to aspire to, while also reminding us of the power they hold over us. When gods are used as symbols of power, they create more than just religious identities. They become tools of political and social control. Throughout history, rulers have often tied their authority to the divine. Pharaohs were gods on earth, kings were chosen by divine right, and emperors were considered gods themselves. In the ancient world, to challenge the king was to challenge the god behind him. The Roman emperors, for example, didn't just rule, they demanded worship. They claimed divinity as part of their imperial image,